Community Police Commission acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Muckleshoot, Suquamish, Duwamish people, past and present. And with humility, we recognize how much we benefit from living on their land and water. The Seattle Community Police Commission honors these tribes, and we hold them in the highest regard. We hope that this acknowledgement will encourage authentic relationship with urban Native people and all Coast Salish tribes. I will now take our attendance. Commissioner Lars Erickson.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Patricia Hunter here. Commissioner Adrian Levitt.
Here, good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Suzette Dickerson. Commissioner Lynn Wilson.
Present, good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Raven Nicole Tyler. Good morning. Commissioner Mary Ruffin. Commissioner Reverend Harriet Walden. Here. Good morning. Good morning. And Commissioner Joel Merkel.
Morning, President.
Good morning. Commissioner Virginia Washington. Commissioner Officer Mark Mullins.
Officer Mark Mullins is here.
Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioner Lieutenant Tony Gatke. Good morning. Commissioner Jeremy Wood. Commissioner Tasha Johnson.
Good morning, present.
Good morning. And Commissioner Erica Newman. Okay, well, thank you all for being here and,
I see Mary.
okay, Commissioner Mary Ruffin, you're present?
Morning, present.
Okay, good morning. As we move forward in our agenda, it is time to approve the agenda that was distributed, but there have been some changes that we would like to propose. We have a couple of commissioners who need to leave early, and we would like to have the discussion on the executive director search while most of the commissioners can be available. So here is our proposed changes to the agenda. The executive director search discussion will be from 9:20 to 10:20. And then at 10:20 to 10:30, we will return to open session. And then our speakers would come and present from 10:30 until 11:15. So I know that's quite a few changes. Again, that's from 9:20 to 10:20, executive director search, including executive session. And then 10:20 to 10:30, return to open session. And our speakers, police to peace, from 10:30 to 11:15. So I would entertain a motion to adopt the revised agenda.
I'll also move.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded that we adopt the amended agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And any abstentions? Great, the motion is carried. The next on the agenda, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes that were distributed. And they're minutes from, I believe, August 2nd. May I have a motion for that?
I'll step away from the chair. Minute.
Thank you. Reverend Walden moves that the minutes be approved. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the minutes being approved from August 2nd, 2023, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Noes, any noes? Abstentions? Great. Then that motion is carried and our minutes from August 2nd are approved. We will move into updates at this point. And a couple of co-chair updates. We want to formally acknowledge that we received the resignation email from Commissioner Joseph Saya on July 28th, 2023. And we are grateful for the many years of service that he gave to the CPC. And he asked to be removed from all future mailings. And now Commissioner Joel has an update as well.
Thank you. I first just want to take a moment of personal privilege to acknowledge the Asian Pacific Islander community in Seattle and throughout the Northwest and in Hawaii, who have suffered enormous tragedy in the last week. The Asian Pacific Islander community is an important part of communities that the CPC engages with in Seattle, and they have a lot of family and friends in Hawaii, and I just want to acknowledge that and let them know we're thinking about them. The update that I have with respect to the legislative affairs work group, I've been working with our policy staff, Jessica, and Suzette Dickerson, and we've been discussing the CPC's 2024 legislative agenda for Olympia, and also with the city's Office of Intergovernmental Relations. As an independent commission, the CPC has the authority to make our own legislative agenda. We don't have to sign up for the city's legislative agenda, although often our agendas align. And last year, we had essentially adopted the city's agenda. However, if we're going to do our own thing, to the extent that our agenda differs from the city's agenda, typically there's a schedule that we need to meet to give the city notice of where we're at. There's some deadlines coming up. My understanding is September 1 is one of the early deadlines for communicating where we're at. We're clearly not going to be able to create our own legislative agenda by September 1, but we're communicating with OIR about what the precise schedule is. We expect to adopt the same agenda for next year, which is something we could communicate by September 1, but to the extent we want to do something additional or different, we're trying to figure out how much more time we have. So look for more updates on the legislative work group at the next meeting. That's my update.
Thank you. Now we'll have an update from our interim executive director.
Great, thank you. So first, I'm very excited to announce that our community engagement director, Felicia Cross, has won another award from the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Executives, or NOBLE. This was presented at the 47th Annual National Conference in Cleveland, which I attended along with Mergitu. The award was the Unsung Hero Award and recognized her many years of dedicated service to NOBLE. And on a personal note, it was very exciting to attend this conference for the first time and see Felicia's connection to this nationwide community of Black leaders. Everywhere we went, Felicia was recognized and welcomed. And as I mentioned in my mid-year presentation to City Council, the CPC staff has recognized award winners locally, nationally, and even internationally for their contributions to police community relations. So we're very lucky to have their expertise. So congratulations, Felicia. She's not here, but I know she will be soon. And then the second thing, so as many work group members mentioned at our last meeting, our senior policy advisor, Mina Martin, has moved to a different accountability partner. So we're down on policy staff right now. But the good news is that our job is posted for that position again, the senior policy advisor. So the posting is live and it will close on September 5th. You all know, commissioners, what this job entails in terms of supporting work groups and working on the critical policy issues for the CPC. So please share this with anyone you know who might be a good fit. We would love to have them at the CPC. I'll send the direct link to the job posting after this meeting. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge and send out sympathies and condolence to Mogitu. Her family member was murdered on a carjacking a few days ago, I mean last week sometime. And it was a vigil last Friday for the family, and the CPC was, some of the CPC was there. Callie, our interim director, and Megan, and Felicia was there also, and myself, and Reverend Hunter was there also. And it has been an arrest in that case, and I think it was arraignment yesterday. So we want to send our condolences. And when I talked to McGee too last night, her mother was in the hospital, on emergency. So, anyway, she said she's gonna be here today, but we'll give her some grace if she's not here today, because the family's really suffering this time.
Thank you, Reverend Walden.
Yeah.
And now we'll have our community engagement, update, and, Mr. Joe Nathan will give the update for today.
All right. Yeah, we've been getting after it. I don't know if you guys have been seeing, Deacon's been it's really been doing a great job of capturing our images and putting us on the website. But we got a lot of reoccurring meetings as well as just new engagements, unique engagements that we're taking part in. So far, we got to like 9 different reoccurring monthly, weekly events from our advisory meetings, and me and Callie sat in on it's a weekly meeting for the Rainier Beach, through the Rainier Beach group. It was, recap it really quick, because we sat in, this is a great event because it was the biggest event ever, like over 100 people. Well, actually, it could have been more. They could only fit in 100 people on the Zoom call. The chief was on it. He got everybody in there. We're just speaking to the recent actions that were happening in the Rainier Beach area, that recent shooting when 5 people got gunned down. So it was a powerful meeting. A lot got said. Even Tamara Morales was on there too. We really got a chance to just to engage with that. Giving credit to Collie too. We recognized that there was a gap, that they could only get 100 people on there. So Collie made the offer like, hey, you can help out to increase that capacity. We'll do that. So Erin Goodman is one who's been sponsoring that, and she was excited about that, and I think they're going to be linking up to talk some more and using us to help that cause, because they're really building that effort. And there's a lot happening in the Rainier Beach community, so definitely a great deal that's going on right there. As far as just recently, yeah, we've been getting out. I'm just going to highlight just a few things. We've been getting out a lot in the community. ACRS has been doing yeah, they've been doing a lot. They're celebrating 50 years of service. So they have a wonderful barbecue. We were out there. We took some good footage of that. We'll be showcasing that. We two out there taking photos and hanging out with everyone. The Native American Powwow, the 34th annual powwow was excellent. Great turnout. Was my first time going, so it was really exciting for me now to get out there just to see how, well, it's fun to see the community and the activity, but I didn't know they were that competitive too. They were having competitions and they were really going at it. So it was really fun seeing that happen. The $27 million cookout. This was a powerful piece. It was a participatory budget. There was a group that I forgot the name of the gal who was the head of it, but basically with that participatory budget project, they were able to receive $27 million. And with that, they're able to allocate that $27 million to different groups in the community. And so when they had this session, they had this food, it's folks, it's fun, my favorite things, but also they created an opportunity for folks to also kind of write in ideas so they can get a part of that $27 million to start or operate their ventures in the community. So it was a great little gathering and a great opportunity for folks to get their ideas and start some new things and make an impact in the community. So the Moja Festival happened at Junkins Park. Great turnout, and each year you just see it just building and building, bringing in artists, marquee artists from out of town. Come on in. Doug Baldwin had a great, the football players, former stand-up for the Seahawks, Baldwin. They had their second annual barbecue. I'm highlighting it because it was in Renton, but the chief actually made a visit out there too. And it was good to see him. It was great little opportunity to connect with Student United Way, Boys and Girls Club. We've also been working to make some partnerships with them too on this end, but it was good seeing them operating. You see all the vendors on the outside. the different barbecue pits that were operating. But the main thing, just seeing all those former Seahawks players just getting out there, having fun, engaging with the community, but also seeing the chief out there being very popular amongst the crowd too. He's really been out there a lot lately, so it's been good to see him. I just want to give another shout out. We mentioned McGee too, but just want to really give a shout out to her and the work that she's doing in the East African community. It's a really unique time because there's a lot of warring going on in her homeland, Ethiopia, etc. There's tribal wars that are happening. There's other things that are going on. Those sensitivities are also carrying forward on this side too. And so not only is she working with our general task of just community safety and policing, but she's also having to work with those differences within the community too, and those gaps. So she's really been a force out there. So just really want to give her flowers today too. That said, a lot has been happening. More is coming. I don't know if y'all saw it. I believe some of you all saw it, because some of you have responded. But we've been working on the public calendar, and so each of these events that we're working to get out in the community, we're putting it on that calendar. I believe I've seen you respond to some too. So thank you. So I've seen folks responding and recognizing that they got on their calendars. They actually may be attending some events. So yes, we're encouraging you to attend these events. We want to be seen. We want folks to know that we're out there. We got their back. That we're doing, we're doing what we can for the community. But of course, showing up and letting ourselves be seen, how important that is. So we're working to do that. We invite you to join us in that effort.
Make sure that if you do join any of those events, that you let us know so that it can be documented and so you can get, it can be accounted for. And also, we will be ordering t-shirts. And if you want a t-shirt to wear, Community Police Commission t-shirt, please let us know, because we will be ordering t-shirts for everyone soon, anyone who wants one.
Yeah, that's part of the effort too. No, that's good too, because we're working to get our uniforms together as well. So we're gonna look all nice when we get out there. And but yeah, more things are coming up. So please check your calendar about that. We're gonna be tabling a lot more this summer. McGee just got a few things set up before the year's out. So yeah, please check the calendar. We would love to see your face when we're out there. Yes, let's not forget about August 31st. Oh yeah, glad you're right on time with that too. So of course, one of the big things coming up August 31st, we have our CPC New Beginnings event at Langston Hughes from 6 to 8 p.m. That's definitely on the calendar. Again, this is one of those moments where we really want to show up as the CPC. We're going to be going over the annual report past 2 years, correct? But also we're gonna break those parts down. But really, this is a time to just. I know this is a big part of Felicia. She could probably speak more into it too. But I know the big part of her vision is just to make this a nice, big, fun event that just celebrates the community and the work that we've been doing, and not only just what we've been doing, but what we plan to do in the future. That's why we're talking about new beginnings, because we're looking forward to a bright future. So maybe Felicia will add on to that.
The only thing I would add to that, thank you, you've done a great job. The only thing I would add to that is we're super excited about this event because it's coming together so well, and we are going to be paying tribute to John T. Williams, who started the whole consent decree, and making acknowledgments. And we've invited the mayor's office and the chief and all of our accountability partners and all the city council. So it would be really good to have all of our commissioners, as many of our commissioners as we could have there. And also, we will be having, it's been confirmed now that Rick Williams will be speaking, and Jay Hollingsworth, who's one of the original consent, to help bring DOJ here along with Reverend Walden. And we're having the drummers, the Native American drummers. We're having several different cuisines from the community, from different ethnic communities. We will be having Rick Williams has agreed to come and do some carving in the background. And so it'd be good to have as many of the youth as we can get there to experience seeing the actual carver. So it's going to be great. It's going to be, we're putting the invitations out far and wide, all the signatories and everybody that we can get. And so I am begging you guys, and I'm saying begging, I am begging each of you commissioners, please forward the invitation to your contacts. So that we could really have a good turnout. So that's the only other thing I would add to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
reach out to Converge Media.
Yes,
Okay,
we have.
so you did, okay, but reach out to Converge.
And congratulations on your award that Director Ellis mentioned earlier before you got in the room. So
Thank you so much.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, we have moved our agenda around a little bit, and so at this point, we will now be going into
Well, we have to do the public.
Oh. The executive director search discussion. We will have that first. So the first part of this conversation will be on the search process, and that will be done in open session before we go into executive session. And Pam Inch, who is the senior executive recruiter, will now share with us.
Great. So wanted to, before we go into executive session, just share some things, share the results of the community survey and follow up on some of the questions commissioners had from the last meeting. So I hope that you had the opportunity to view the candidate forum, which is available on the Seattle channel. I really want to give a shout out to Keisha, who really helped in pulling that together with me, and also the Seattle channel staff, who really have kind of done a lot of work to make the event happen. I will say that I watched it 3 times. It got better every time. So I hope that you all had the chance to take a look at it. One of the questions put forward to me from the commissioners to research was whether or not the commissioners could appoint a deputy director as well as an executive director. And I want to let you know that the answer to that question at this time is no. While you have the opportunity to appoint someone who is not covered under the civil service, it did confirm that while the council has established the position and established the scope of the position, it is not given budgetary authority for the position, and probably you'll be receiving that as part of the regular budget process. So in city parlance, we say you don't have a pocket yet. And so once that pocket has been authorized, you can begin the process to fill it. But certainly that classification process that was discussed, that is something that can go on now, and you should be involved in that. That is, the commission as an entity should be involved in that, because that's part of the budget process, is to put that together. I do want to share some key takeaways from the survey, the community survey. It closed last night at midnight. We had 12 responses, and we asked a series of questions. There's questions that we ask routinely in executive search in the Seattle with the city of Seattle. They are the similar questions that we asked of the director for the Office of Police Accountability. So just some key takeaways. The top 3 priorities that were identified by survey respondents were engage of the community, of the executive director, were engage in community outreach to obtain the perspectives of community members and SPD employees on police community relations, SPD policies and practices, the police accountability system, and other matters. The second was review and provide input on the police accountability system and Seattle Police Department policies and practices. And the third was maintaining connections with representatives of disenfranchised communities and community groups. Then we asked about quality. So that gets into the talent, experience, alignment rubric that we've been working with. 4 qualities were identified as kind of the top 4. They were create trusted partnerships, build bridges with disenfranchised communities, and connect with those experiencing police violence. Center race and equity in process and decisions. lead people and operations to achieve measurable, equitable outcomes, and finally, manage complex agency, community, and political relationships. We then asked folks to kind of say we gave them a series of characteristics and asked them which they found most aligned with the mission of the CPC. They identified 4: creating trusted relationships, building bridges with disenfranchised communities, and connecting with those experiencing inequity and police violence; strong inner compass for racial equity, people and culture, ability to discern needs of others, particularly those marginalized and who have experienced police violence; acknowledge and is influenced by the disproportionate impact of policing on Black, Brown, Indigenous, and disenfranchised communities; and finally, manages and leads through collaborative relationships. We then asked kind of 2 open-ended questions. The first kind of open-ended question was, we asked kind of, what does the executive director need to get right? And from that, I kind of pulled 4 themes from that. That they need to have demonstrated experience with policing and police accountability, policy development, and community engagement. So those were seen as the technical skills by community that were very important. There is this need of the executive director to connect with community, specifically to have excellent communication skills and listening skills. And there is this sense from both of these responses that the expectation of community would be the executive director would serve as a spokesperson for the commission. They need to build trust and understand diverse perspectives, and they need to be an advocate for change, so evidence-based and have expertise in policy development. Finally, we asked kind of, what do you want the CPC to consider in their hiring decision? And I pulled 5 general themes from that. The person that you choose should possess expertise in police oversight with an understanding of the systemic barriers in that work. They have to have good cultural and racial awareness. They have to be a strong communicator. They need to be able to lead and build a strong team within the staff. And they also need to be able to advocate for community within a highly political environment. So those are the general themes. I forwarded my summary to the commissioners. I've given it also to Keisha so she can put that in your records. And that is the summary. I'm going to turn it back to the co-chairs to talk about kind of the process for our discussions in executive session.
Okay, well, we're gonna go into the executive session, and the commission will now be doing so to evaluate the qualifications of applicants for public employment pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, subsection 1G, and to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency a litigation or potential litigation related to a proposed action or current practice pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, subsection 1I. And it's expected that the commission will be in executive session until approximately 10:20 a.m. And then the commission will return to open session. So at this point, we will move into executive session.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back in open session. I believe we're recording. Thank you, everyone, for returning. Is there a motion at this time?
I can make a motion to put the Callie Ellis name in.
There's a motion to nominate Collie Ellis as our next executive director. Is there a second?
A second.
There is a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will go into a vote on the motion. We'll do a roll call vote. I'll start with folks that I have in the room. Reverend Hunter,
Aye.
Reverend Walden,
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson.
Aye.
I'm going to go to folks on conference. Commissioner Levitt.
No.
Commissioner Levitt.
No.
Commissioner Gatke.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson. Commissioner Tyler.
No.
Commissioner Newman. Commissioner Mullins. Commissioner Ruffin.
No.
Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Washington. And Commissioner Merkel, myself, I am voting yes. One moment. The motion has 8 votes. That is a majority of commissioners present. There are, by my count, I think 12 commissioners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 commissioners present, 8 voting yes, 5 voting no. Motion carries, and the commission will forward Dr. Kali Ellis's name to the City Council for confirmation. Thank you, everyone, for the participation in the process. Congratulations, Dr. Ellis.
I believe
Thank
we
you.
also need, congratulations, we also need another motion to, for the co-chair to be authorized to sign forms to move forward with this process of securing an executive director. Is that correct?
That's correct. So both to finalize the city employment paperwork as well as to finalize the paperwork necessary for confirmation.
Thank you, Pam. So is there a motion to
We lost the main room. If anybody can hear me.
Yeah, I lost the sound too, sir. Can you hear it?
I lost the sound too. This is Ron Ward.
How are you, Ron?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We don't get a chance to talk very much, but nice to hear your voice.
You, you also, very much so.
Let's see if I can get a hold of somebody and let them know.
Can folks hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we've had an audio glitch in the room. I'll go ahead and repeat. We have a motion that's been made and seconded to authorize the co-chairs to sign paperwork to formally nominate the candidate for Edie Kali Ellis to the City Council. All in favor of authorizing the co-chairs to sign that paperwork, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries, and the co-chairs will sign that paperwork.
We'll get that to you today.
Thank you, Pam. And thank you for everyone participating in that process. It's been going on for some time. And there was a lot of really important discussion. Oh, and we have sound back. This brings us to the next part of our agenda today, which involves discussion on SPD police culture that is going to be facilitated by a representative from Police to Peace. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Ellis to introduce our presenter.
Thank you very much. We are very excited to have representatives from Police to Peace today. And this will provide additional insight into police culture after our meeting with Chief Diaz about a month ago. They will share more about what they do, but I wanted to welcome and introduce our guests. So first, Lisa Broderick is the founder and executive director of Police to Peace, which is a 5-year-old national nonprofit bridging the gap between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve by implementing positive changes in policing practices. Police to Peace fosters trust, understanding, and cooperation between police officers and community members through innovative initiatives, including community engagement programs and police training. Prior to this, Lisa was a high-tech executive for more than 30 years, serving at the helm of more than 20 small and mid-cap companies. She's also an economist with a graduate degree from Stanford University and Duke University's MBA program. We are also joined today by Chief Jim Borman, who spent more than 40 years in policing. He was a member of the Redlands, California Police Department until 2011. And then when he retired, his efforts were recognized by the Innovations in American Government Award as one of the 25 most innovative governmental programs in America. He's worked for the DOJ, National Institute of Justice, and Executive Fellow, and in 2012 was appointed as president of the National Police Foundation. Welcome so much, Lisa and Jim.
Muted.
Lisa, you're muted. No, we can't hear you. I just unmuted her, but. Yeah, she's still muted on her end.
Still muted, Ms. Broderick.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. The audio settings were a little confusing, had many settings. Thank you so much, Callie. Thank you, everyone who welcomes us today. Again, I'm Lisa Broderick, and as described a minute ago, Police to Peace fosters trust, understanding, and cooperation between police officers and community members. We do this through community engagement programs and police training. We work with large departments and small all over the nation, and we shift the mindset from warrior to guardian. That is our work, from police officer to peace officer. We do this by helping agencies transform their internal organizational cultures so that officers would say to themselves, we wouldn't even consider doing that when they see examples of other officers' use of excessive force, for example. And in Washington State, police officers are defined as peace officers by the state legislature. Our police trainings are both in-person and virtual, are nationally accredited, and can be used in continuing education credit in Washington State. So now I'll turn it over to Chief Jim Bierman. Chief?
Hi, thank you, Lisa. Can you hear me okay? I just want to make sure, since we're having some audio challenges, that you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for this opportunity to chat with you. I have lots of really rich and warm memories of Seattle. Over the years, I've been involved in policing in one form or another since the 70s, and have spent some time with some of your chiefs, even taught there through the Drug Court Institute and University of Washington. So I love your town, love the city of Seattle, and have struggled, I guess, a little bit with some of the things I've seen you guys grappling with. And so kudos to you all for caring enough to try to help advance policing in the city of Seattle. Lisa, are you showing the PowerPoint now?
I will be. I'm doing that right this minute.
Okay, so while she's getting that queued up, I'm going to talk very quickly. I serve as an advisor to Police to Peace. So I'm really a consultant now, but to DOJ still, and to Police to Peace and some other entities. But I've been really fortunate to have kind of an interesting set of experiences in policing that will inform the way I think about policing today and talk about it. Not only was I the police chief in Redlands, but as a result of using a research-based and evidence-based model that came out of the University of Washington at Seattle, two guys named Hawkins and Catalano, developed a thing called risk and protective focus prevention. And we adopted that in the late 90s as our operational model at the police department. And it was focused on reducing adolescent problem. The 5 key problems that we focused on were delinquency, violence, dropping out of school, substance abuse, and teen pregnancy. And as a result of that, we realized we didn't have enough tools in our toolbox to do the kind of work we were focused on, which is reducing youth violence ultimately. So we asked the city council to give us more tools, and that meant that we consolidated into the police department housing, recreation, senior services, code enforcement, and other functions. And that gave us a suite of tools with which to work. Did we need to consolidate them into the police department to do this work? Probably not. But by doing so, we were able to access grant programs and revenue streams that were restricted to law enforcement use by doing this. And it also gave me, as the police chief and director of all those things, quite frankly, the ability to use the bully pulpit that I had as the police chief to talk about recreation as not leisure activities for kids, but as a positive pro-social experience and activities and function for kids in those critical after school hours. And our housing functions were not really about bricks and mortar, but were really about reducing the transitions and mobility of families that move from place to place. We had many schools in our school district where the turnover rate in the classrooms was in excess of 100%. And that, what that translates to is all the kids that start the first day of school, they're not there at the last day of school. You've turned over the whole thing, and that's because families move around. So you'll hear me talking about policing probably in a slightly different way than you may have heard. Um, there is no monolithic model. You know, policing in the United States is not homogeneous, and that makes it difficult. But I do believe that there are some commonalities. And one of the things I think that needs to happen in policing is, and that we have not done very well, is talk about the culture of policing. And we really need to engage in, I like to kind of kid about this a little bit, but it's really about genetic reengineering policing, really digging down into the DNA level, developing new mindsets about policing, not only internally from the cop standpoint, the department standpoint, but also from the community standpoint and the elected officials that have oversight responsibilities and groups like yours that have oversight responsibilities. And with that comes new results, we hope. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is not a very productive enterprise, in my opinion. When we think about that stuff, I think we have to fundamentally talk about the purpose of policing. What is the purpose of policing? And I don't think we have an agreement on that in this country. And you may not have an agreement on that in the city of Seattle, but it's fundamental to thinking about policing from a strategic standpoint to get clear about that. And when you get clear about what the purpose is, you also have to get clear about the outcomes. If you don't know what your purpose is, then whatever you are is okay, I guess. If you don't know what outcomes you're trying to achieve, then whatever results you get are probably okay. None of us would take a trip. We all said we're going to Washington, D.C. for a reason. The outcome we seek is to get to DC in time for a meeting or a conference, right? So we would plan that way. We wouldn't just say, well, maybe we should just jump in a plane and maybe hopefully we get there. Nobody does that, right? In their personal lives when they're trying to achieve things. And yet we do that frequently in governmental things and certainly in policing where we're not clear about what our purpose is. Is it law enforcement? I don't believe that it necessarily is at all. I think it's about brokering peace, and that's what we're talking about here. And then what are the outcomes we seek? So, you know, why are we here today? I mean, why are Lisa and I talking to you? Obviously, you guys have your own issues. I've read the stories, shocked by them. But the images that we've seen, go to the next slide, Lisa. You've seen all these, right? These things were floating around the internet. They drove public perception because they are so striking in their pain and the manifestation of inequity in our system and how policing is goofed up. But if you, one of the things that's advantageous, I guess, about being in policing as long as I have, is that you see things over a long period of time. I mean, a very long period of time. And so if you look at these images and with just a little bit of imagination, you don't have to use much, right? Doesn't this look, it could be the 60s all over again, right? So it's almost like the movie Groundhog Day for policing. We have been working around the margins. Policing is qualitatively much better today than it is when I started. But a lot of people don't realize that or even believe that because of the images we see, because of the behavior of some of the officers, because of the lack of trust and confidence that many people have in the police. So I think we just need to start thinking differently about this, right? Because we're not getting there by improving processes and things. That's important. I'm not saying that it isn't. It's part of the accountability process and other things. But if we don't understand that the fundamental problems in policing are cultural, and this notion that so many people in our country really just don't have a lot of trust and confidence in police. The polling shows that the Pew organization has done polling around this for years and years and years, and it's getting worse. And it's across multiple ethnicities now. Next slide. So if that's the problem, and I think that is the fundamental problem, everything flows out of that. What are some of the elements of whatever the solution is? And you've got them here. I won't read them all for you, but I think these are very important, that what we do is realistic and it's got to be sustainable, right? It's got to be around sometime in the future. And this second bullet point, I think I just talked about, it absolutely positively has got to address the culture of policing. If you're trying to advance policing, you're trying to create a more rightful policing model in whatever city we're talking about, and you do not address the culture of your police department, then you're never going to get there. It's not going to happen. And I think we've got to be very clear about the harm that some policing practices have caused on the very people that the cops are paid to protect, which is rather ironic. So next slide. The thing that makes the most sense to me, and this is why I have gravitated to Police to Peace when I first heard about what they were doing, is this idea of peace officers, right? So in more than 70% of the states in our country, by statute, and I'm sorry, I don't know if this is true in Washington, but it is certainly in California where I am. By statute, cops are referred to as peace officers, not police officers, not law enforcement officers, but peace officers. Why did legislature, and in 80% of the states, they interchange that. So the overwhelming majority of states, the statutory language that gives cops the authority to enforce laws and do whatever they do says that they're peace officers. So how do we disconnect from that notion, that mental model, the framework, the paradigm, if you will, of being peace officers? And I think part of the problem is that we have lost sense of this purpose of policing. And I think that when you think about, and you can use a variety of terms for this, but I like the term rightful policing. You know, what is just the right way for policing wherever? I think there are these three fundamental pieces of good policing that everybody would agree on, and that is that they have to be effective, empathetic, and just. They've got to be, the cops have to be effective. They got to do their job. You pay them to do a certain thing, solve a murder, recover your car, whatever. Empathy is solely lacking, I think, in policing. The ability to put yourself in the other person's shoes. I'm a white guy. If I stop a young African American motorist and he wants to know why I've stopped him, assuming that he is somehow being defiant when he says, "Why have you stopped me?" which happens a lot, that means that I'm being anything but empathetic, right? Understanding that his experiences with the police and his perceptions are different than mine means that I have to explain to him that this is why. And, you know, good policing models around traffic stops and pedestrian stops, for instance, teach cops that the first thing out of your mouth should not be, "Let me see your license and registration, and I'll tell you why I've stopped you later on." The very first thing should be, "I have stopped you," is introduce yourself, right? "I'm so-and-so. I've stopped you because of the following reasons. Is there a reason you were speeding, or is there a reason you ran through the stop sign?" I can get your license and registration at any point during that detention, but explain to you, because there may be a legitimate reason for you doing it, and etc. I think because of our states' rights model, we're not going to get what a friend of mine, Jeremy Travis, who used to run the National Institute of Justice and is one of the smartest people I've ever met about criminal justice issues and all that, talks about the national coherence around policing. And I think it's going to, if we're ever going to find one, it's going to be around those three things. The police should be effective, empathetic, and just. So when we're talking about how do you get there, how do you find the true purpose of policing in Seattle or in Redlands or wherever? I think you have to have certain kind of guiding beliefs about this, and they're kind of out here. And one of them is, I don't think demonizing the police is going to be helpful to anybody, because all it does is cause them to circle the wagons, right? And I also think whether they're firefighters, medical personnel, teachers who are willing to come into a classroom when COVID's running wild, or cops, anybody who's willing to put themselves at risk for perfect strangers, I don't think we should demonize them. But that is not to say that we have to like their behavior, accept their behavior, or the processes. It just means we should be talking about behaviors and cultures and things like that, and not trying to demonize the people in there. And this last point here, I think, is fundamental to this. Whatever model we use for working on the finding the purpose of policing and working on the culture of policing has to work for both the community and the cops. And there is a way to get there, in my opinion. And that overlapping of commonalities is what we need to seek. Next slide. Lisa mentioned that you'll hear us use the word guardians of community safety. There's a huge difference between guardians and warriors. The first person I ever really heard articulate this was Sheriff Sue Rohr from the King County Sheriff's Department many years ago at a cops conference in Washington, D.C., where she talked about guardians. Cops should be guardians, not warriors. Guardians are the highest level of kind of public servant that are selfless and are there to protect everybody. At times, they might have to act warrior-like if you have an active shooter situation or something, for instance. But most of the time, they should be there to provide guardianship for people in a way that's respectful, helps people retain their dignity, and is equitable in nature. And when we think about accountability measures, reward systems within police departments, all of these are part of the culture. All of those have to be in alignment with whatever it is that we're trying to do. Okay, next. So what do we mean by this? It's great to talk about we should be peace officers when you're talking to cops, but what does that mean, right? And again, you'll hear us consistently and all the time hammer away at these three words. Human beings remember and understand shorter things than longer series of things. I think every police department in America should have a mission statement that has these three words in it. We're going to be effective, but we're going to be empathetic and just. And the just part is we're going to be constitutional, right? There's this thing called the Constitution. Every cop in America takes an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state in which they work. And then they forget it, right? All you have to do is watch some of the behaviors, whether in protests or other places, where somehow that just seems to have vaporized from their recollection, I guess. I don't know. Next slide. So being a peace officer does not mean that you're soft on crime. It means you're smart on crime. That we use evidence-based practices, we use common sense, we use the things that we should have all learned as children about dignity and respect for people, right? The golden rule of policing is you police people the way you'd like to be policed, or you'd like your mom to be policed, or your kids, or your grandma, or whatever, right? Can we do that? And that's part of the values that need to be articulated in an organization. And those values, you have to be, that a police department's organizational values are in alignment when you can see those values reflected not only in the department, but in the community. I'm a big advocate of community-led policing, right? The community owns the police department. They're the taxpayers. So are we listening to the community in terms of what they want relative to outcomes and what should be important? And then have we aligned those values in everything in the police department, everything from who we hire, our promotional systems, other reward systems, accountability measures, et cetera, et cetera. And we should talk more and more about this idea of community peacekeeping. And peacekeeping is not simply just keeping people from shooting at each other. That is fundamentally important, right? In a country that has more guns than anything, that is a fundamental thing we have to do. But we keep peace. And in fact, when you look at what cops do most of the time, they spend a huge amount of their time not in enforcing law, but in conflict resolution or trying to manage situations before they get out of hand. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we have to find those commonalities. What do people in the community want from the police department, and what do the cops want? And it is my belief that when you can get people to focus on those things and not pointing fingers and yelling at each other and doing all that, you'll end up essentially with the effective, empathetic, and just kind of an orientation. So we just talked about most of these things here. Just it is not this idea. The peace officer project is kind of what we talk about in terms of the operationalizing through a training system that Police to Peace has. It is, as I said, it's not soft on crime. It is not inconsistent with what the legal mandate of the police is. It's not radically, it's not a radical departure from what the police are supposed to be doing. And it doesn't weaken their authority. These are usually the things you have to talk to the cops about because they think this is going to be soft on crime. It's like touchy-feely. You've emasculated us, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, it's not. It's none of those things. It's actually strengthening your position because it's increasing the trust and confidence people have in you because you're giving them the kind of service and policing that they want and they need. Next slide. So you'll hear these things a lot, and I don't need to repeat all of these things. I do think part of the Peace Officer Project incorporates a thing called the Promise, and it is based on medicine's Hippocratic Oath. The Hippocratic Oath purports to tell physicians, above all, doctor, when you're trying to cure your patient, try not to harm them, right? It says a lot of other things. It's an interesting document to read, and the history of it's really interesting. There's no such document for policing. There's nothing that says, while we will do our best to control crime, we're also going to do everything in our power not to harm the very people we're paid to protect. That statement, in my opinion, should be a requisite of every police leader, every cop in America. It should be part of the oath. Almost all cops in America take the same law enforcement code of ethics kind of an oath. You take an oath of office when you get sworn in. And it doesn't say anything in there about reducing harm. It's all about this other stuff. You can imply it because it says, you uphold the Constitution. But I think we have to focus and stop hiding around the notion that sometimes policing is harmful to people. Some of the things that policing does and some of the strategies, and there's a whole series of discussions about that and how we ended up there, can be harmful to people. Why would you do that? And I would say this to police chiefs or to people that said, we're not going to take that oath. I personally would not go to a physician that I learned refused to take the Hippocratic Oath. I'm not going to a doctor who's not going to tell me, hey, I'm going to try my best not to harm you while I'm trying to cure you. And I'd probably say the same thing to police leaders and police officers. If you're not willing to take a sacred oath to say that you'll do your best to control crime, but while you're doing that, you will do everything in your power not to harm the people you're paid to protect, I'm not going to hire you, and I don't want that person as my police chief. Next. So this kind of slide just kind of tells you, I think, why I would say to a community person, why would you be interested as a community member or an elected official in a peace officer orientation for your department, right? Policing does not exist in a vacuum by any stretch of the imagination. I kind of view it as a bit of a tripod, right? The three component pieces. You got the cops, you got the community, and you got the oversight piece, which is in most places the elected body, the city council or whatever. Some places like Seattle have bodies like your own. But you have to have some awareness that there are these three components that interplay with each other to produce policing. I believe people get the kind of policing they're willing to tolerate or demand. If you don't like the kind of policing you're getting and you tolerate it, then that's what you're going to get if you don't like it. And if you don't like it, then you should demand kind of policing that is rightful, that is effective, empathetic, and just. Next. So that's it. This is, not, I think our comments here are not today designed to directly solve the concerns you may have about the culture of the Seattle Police Department. This is to give you a very high level brief exposure to a different mindset, a different paradigm for thinking about policing. And then there's a whole nother discussion about how you operationalize that, right? How do you make that real within the department, the community, with elected leaders and all of that stuff? But the very first thing I think we have to do before we make fundamental changes in really anything, and I spent a lot of time working with people that were addicted in my career, and what I learned from talking to lots and lots and lots and lots of addicts and doing a lot of work within the Drug Court Institute is that until we acknowledge that there's a problem, we're never going to solve it. Until we get clear about what we're trying to fix, we're never going to do that. So I think for me, the very first thing we have to do is go back to what I said. You got to get clear on what's the purpose of policing in your community, what are the outcomes we seek, and what's the model we're going to use that works for everybody, that works for electeds, community, and the police. And to me, based on my decades of not only experience in policing in California, but also on a national and international level when I was running the National Police Foundation, which is now known as the National Policing Institute. It is the country's oldest non-membership, nonpartisan police research organization. I am absolutely convinced that the only way we're going to get ourselves out of this is when we start thinking differently about policing and get clearer what we're looking for. Okay, that's it. Thanks. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Chief. I do want to note that it's 11:13 and our previously approved agenda has us adjourning at 11:15. However, we had extended a prior section of our meeting by 20 minutes. So unless there's an objection, I propose we extend this meeting by 20 minutes to 11:35 to give space for folks to ask some questions. Yeah, they can wait. You want to do 15 minutes?
15 would be okay.
15? Okay, we have another meeting at 11:30, so I propose we extend this meeting to 11:30 to give space for folks to ask some questions. I certainly, yes, Commissioner Johnson.
Say that I won't be able to stay, so if there are any things that, if we're not at quorum, that need to be voted on, I can, okay, all right.
Thank you.
So I'll be 11:15. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
All right, so without objection, we'll go ahead and continue this meeting to 11:30. There's another meeting in this room at 11:30. Others, I have some questions and thoughts, but I want to just first open it up to see if other folks want to jump in with their questions first. Commissioner Mullins.
I have a question for Ms. Broderick and Chief Bierman. Am I pronouncing that right?
It's just easier to say Jim, but it's Bierman is my last name. It's just Jim.
Okay. So, what's the status so far with Police to Peace in terms of SPD? Are you ingrained, or are you officially working with the Seattle Police Department right now, or what's your status?
I can answer that. We have no relationship with the Seattle Police Department right now. We have presented before on a forum like this that we were invited to, having to do with ShotSpotter, and know about and know individuals around in and around the police department, but have no relationship.
So in terms of your broader assessment of police culture, have you ridden along with any police officers on the Seattle Police Department?
I have not personally. Jim would better be able to answer that. He has more experience with the Seattle Police Department.
Yeah, so I've interacted with Seattle PD over the years multiple times, but it's been several years since I have been there doing work or doing things. We ran a randomized control trial there years ago when I was at the foundation, and that was my last experience with them. So I'm not somebody who can, speak to the state of the current culture.
Okay, so that's my contention. There's been a lot of changes, and the first thing that I ask someone, if they're talking about our culture or if they're talking about our officers and wanting to change our status or names or whatever you call us. Wyatt Earp was a peace officer too. And Lord have mercy, I hope we don't go back to that. What I'm saying is, if we are planning on looking into our culture and changing our culture, we probably need to know what the current status of our culture is. And you don't have to necessarily have an official role or be invited to join in with the police department to ride along. Your assessment of us can be found out by numerous ride-alongs. I won't say one ride-along because possibly someone they're going to put you with is going to shine you on and allow you to think that everything's just wonderful and great. I suggest that you ride along with several officers to find out the culture of Seattle Police Department. And I'm sure there are officers out there who wouldn't mind passing that along to you. So I love your energy and your ideas. I just hope that it's able to be customized for the conditions in which the Seattle Police Department and its officers are in right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, that is a great point. We're not in Seattle or Washington, and we were just informed of this meeting a day or two ago. And if anything develops out of it, that would certainly be the case.
Well, you can ride along anytime you want to. Fill out a form and come ride along. You could ride
I
along.
know we need to fly into Seattle first, though, so we'll be working on that.
Okay.
I have some questions and thoughts. I want to first call on Community Engagement Director Felicia Cross, who I think has something to add.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, Mark, that I work very closely with the chief and with Lisa, and I have actually presented the information, Police to Peace, to the training center and to others within the Seattle Police Department. And we are still working on getting them to at least have an introduction of the modules. You might want to go through the modules yourself. They're always looking for the feedback too, but I think it'd be worth it.
I'd be willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is for Broderick and Jim. One reason that the co-chairs felt it was important to have a discussion about SPD culture today, continuing our discussion from our meeting, I believe on July 19. And we plan on continuing to have this discussion. There was because of a point that Jim made early in his presentation that without a discussion and a change of culture or alignment of culture with the community's values, it is very difficult to for the community to have the outcomes that it wants in its police services. And that's really the heart of the issue. That's what brought DOJ to town in Seattle. That's what created the Community Police Commission. And we are continuing to work on that. So that is really the heart of the issue. And we could talk about this hours and hours on meetings. But my specific question is, there, at least from the CPC's experience, seem to be some specific barriers to addressing some cultural issues related to, for example, things that SPD is working on for now include training of new recruits, new training for officers that have been there a while. There's the contract negotiations with the police guild. These are all factors and sometimes barriers into addressing police culture and bringing police culture at least closer to the values of the community it is charged with policing. So my question is, what, in your experience and in the work that Police to Peace is doing, are some effective strategies, initiatives, whatever, that the community and an organization like the CPC can employ to have more positive results and outcomes on working on those specific things.
Jim, I think that you'd be best to comment on that. If you'd be willing.
So, yeah, well, so let me just say, that cultural change within police departments is not easy work. And anybody who tries to tell you that it's a simple thing, and if you just do this one thing, you'll change everything, it's just selling you a bill of goods. There are a lot of moving parts in a police department. There's a lot of moving parts in the city of Seattle and the communities that represent Seattle. And it is tough, complicated work. Unless everybody gets on the same page of music about where you currently are. I thought Mr. Mullins made a great point, which is you first have to understand where you are before you can fix anything. And doing that in a way that does not create a zero-sum atmosphere for either the community or the cops or the elected officials is really important, because the minute we start doing that, everybody circles the wagons, you default to a protective posture, and then you stop talking about what is it we're trying to fix. If I was talking to the guild about this kind of stuff, I'd try to frame this around what's in it for them. In policing today, and for the last several years, there's been a movement across the country, driven in large part by the U.S. Department of Justice, to focus on what's known as officer wellness. Almost always when you see really bad behavior by cops, where they're abusing people or engaged in misconduct, those cops doing it are very unhealthy people. Not maybe physically, but they're emotionally unhealthy. They've experienced their own trauma or whatever. And so the idea behind this, and why DOJ is behind this, is if you can help those cops become better people and healthier people, they'll be better police officers in their day-to-day interaction. It's a little more complicated than that. So talking to police unions about this, and one of the modules that Police to Peace has in the online training is focused directly on unions, is what's in it for them. Why would they do this? And part of that is there's a lot of research around when you work in unsupportive or toxic work environments, what it does to you as an employee. And that applies to cops too. So it's better when you're driving your police car around town that when people wave at you, they use all their fingers when they wave at you, right? It's a better psychological model for you than when they flip you off, right? Or they yell at you or whatever, because I think most cops believe they are really trying to protect the community. And when people react to them that way, it's hard for them to understand sometimes. And that's because they're not in the right empathetic framework, in my opinion. So I think the first thing is you got to get everybody on board with the idea that you understand the culture. Let's figure out what's going on. And just because one person does something does not mean that's the culture. But there are indicators that these are cultural things. When things go on and on and on, and people see things and don't take any action, when supervisors know about something and don't intervene. This is why the duty to intervene is such a big deal now in policing. It's a cultural piece. Then when you are clear about where you are and you become clear collectively about where you want to go, then the steps in between are actually not too difficult to achieve, in my opinion. They're not conceptually difficult, but you do have to first understand where you are and where you're going.
Thank you, Jim. We have 5 more minutes. I have one quick follow-up question, and I want to see if anyone else has any other questions. The officer wellness is certainly an important factor, but another factor that we're working on at the commission, and certainly in the last couple of meetings, is the element of race and racism and racial injustice. So to what extent is Police to Peace working on those problems with policing and police culture?
So I'll take you back to the 3 key words that drive everything we do: empathetic, effective, empathetic, and just. It is in that arena, that last thing, just, where the issue of equity in policing, diversity in policing, et cetera, et cetera. We have frequent conversations with agencies that are struggling with recruitment, especially of people of color, candidates of color. And I keep telling them, I said, well, if you don't have a policing model that they view as rightful and noble, why would they want to come work for you? Why would a parent say to their kid, I want you to go become a cop. Cops get paid a lot of money. They have great benefits, right? It is a great job just from the compensation standpoint and benefits. Why aren't people breaking down the door to get on that job? I think for a lot of families and a lot of people, it's because it's not viewed as a just or noble occupation. I don't want my kid becoming a cop and abusing people and doing all that. Or I believe in policing. I believe that local cops are really noble. What they're doing is, you know, really almost spiritual in nature. So I want my kid to do that. And so when you're off base with that just piece, and you have to tease that out, right? You have to say, well, what do you mean for us? We have a whole discussion about what does that mean? And you cannot in this country have a discussion about equitable policing and justice in policing without talking about race. If you do, then you're just denying where we are as a country, where we've been and where we've come from and hopefully where we're going to go, and it's not comfortable for a lot of people, but change is frequently not comfortable. And you have to have the courage to do that. And you have to, I think, also have the grace when you're nudging police unions and cops into that place to do it, to understand their world and try not to cause them to default into this, completely defensive posture so they don't understand it, because what's in their best interest is the same thing that's in the community's best interest. And you got to get them to see that somehow.
Thank you, Jim. We have time for one more question before we adjourn. Officer Mullins, I see your hand up.
How many Afro-Americans do you have working for your organization? One. Two, do you know where Rainier and Henderson is in Seattle? And second of all, third of all, you talked about your resources. I, as an officer, am concerned about the Rainier Beach area. I'm concerned about all of Seattle and the number of shootings that have been happening. One of my main objectives is to keep shootings from happening. And one of the things that I have a problem with in terms of resources, you named some resources that you bring when you come to various police departments. One of them is I've been trying to get food for people because I have massive amounts of people shoplifting because they're hungry. I have massive amounts of people that are angry because they don't have food. They don't have food for themselves. They don't have food for their kids. I've actually pieced together a situation in which I have a minister who prepares meals for people that has given them to me to hand out. Now, I got to find out whether I have permission to do that or not from the police department, but I've been struggling with that and trying to get that done for a long time. Is that a possibility coming from you that we can find out what kind of organizations we can put together to try to get people fed?
Well, I will take that just quickly, if I may, and that is on the first question, the number of African Americans, I would say a third to a half. The truth is, I never thought about it that way. But we are the community we represent, which is America. And so that's the first case. The second case is, besides police training, we do community engagement. And when we do community engagement, we often do programs which would be similar to the one that you talked about. We haven't specifically done that. With that said, as Jim pointed out, when he was director of all those other services, it's a system, which is why your question is so great, officer. It's a system where you have the underlying drivers, and then you have the behaviors that are outcomes. And how do we work with the system so that policing works for everybody and the community works for everybody? I hope that answer was adequate.
And Officer Mullins, I apologize for not calling you officer earlier. I didn't know you were a cop.
Well, that's okay.
A reflection of the organizational culture is found in the fact that you think you have to ask for permission to help broker a deal between community partners to get people fed. I will just tell you that in my former organization, my PD, nobody had to ask to do that. The cops just did it because we talked about this all the time. And part of our mantra was that only people count. Only people count. So do what helps people. You shouldn't have to ask that question whether you have permission to do that or not. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Well, I'd like to thank Police to Peace for coming today. as I've said before, we do not expect this to be the end of conversations related to SE culture. But unfortunately, we are at the end of our meeting today, so we will adjourn and we will see everyone next on September 6th. Thank you, everyone, and have a really good rest of your day.
Good luck to all of
everyone.
you.
Thank you.